going to start the worksheet with you. You're going to try it at home. You're going to come back and you're going to tell me what you're stuck on.
We're going to get a worksheet.
This is the worksheet that you have in front of you. Okay, so we'll just do some together. What you have to remember is these trig words, sine, cosine, and tangent, they're just ratios of two sides of a triangle. So in reference to, say, an angle, like angle P here, if I want the sine of P, I'm really looking for a ratio of the opposite side, P, the side that's opposite P compared to the hypotenuse. So in this triangle over here, in reference to capital P, the side opposite is just little p, and the hypotenuse is just r. So it's just a ratio. The reason they ask you that question is just to instill in you that it's a ratio.
So that angle is sig.
We don't know the angle. The angle's p. The way you read that problem is the sine of p. The sine of p is just a ratio of two sides. Sine means it's a ratio. So the sine of angle P is the ratio of the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse. It's going to be clearer after you practice it. It's weird because it's like a whole foreign language all of a sudden. So that's why you just watch me do a few of these. It might help. So if I wanted to do the tangent of P, well, the tangent is the opposite side over the adjacent side. So I find angle P, which is circled in green. Opposite of P is little p, and the adjacent is Q. So the adjacent side is what people have trouble with. It's not the hypotenuse, and it's not the opposite. It's one of the sides that forms the angle, but it's not the hypotenuse. So I'm going to keep doing this. When you have a problem like this, you have to find the missing side with your Pythagorean triplets. So what's the missing side here? 10. Now, they're asking you for the sine of t, so you find t, and then you do the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse. So the sine of t, before you reduce it, is 8/10, or 4/5, or another correct answer would be 0.8. It's just the ratio of those two sides. It's a ratio. That's all it is. Does that make sense? So if I wanted the cosine of t, I would have to do the adjacent side instead of the opposite, because cosine's ratio uses adjacent. So if I want the cosine of t, I'm still looking at cosine of t, but now I'm using adjacent and hypotenuse. So it's 6/10.
So you want to get to a decimal.
You don't have to, it's an option. So you could have, cosine of t is 6/10, which is 3/5. 3/5 would be one correct answer. 0.6 is the other. Those are your two reduced, simplified answers. You should reduce it, yes. But mathematically, it's still the same value every day. Okay, so this front worksheet is just getting you to get used to the terms and how to operate with them on a calculator. Okay? So like, I'm skipping around on purpose. You're going to go in and do the same thing by yourself, filling in. On this part, it's just an exercise with the calculator. This is a ratio and proportion. Remember, if there's not a fraction over here, you could always put a 1 there. So on that problem, if I'm solving for x, like any ratio and proportion, you multiply what's on the diagonal and divide by what's left over. So x in this case is just 28 times the cosine of 64. In other words, they're making sure you can use the calculator. That's the only point of exercise 9 through 11. So with your calculator, which is different than mine on the smart screen, you're going to type in, just like you see, 28 cosine of 64. You want to make sure you're in degrees. My calculator is a little bit different. I have to put the 64 in first.
So it's 12.
So you should get 12.27 roughly, and it says to the nearest hundred, so that's, yes, about 12.27. 27. Can you guys type that in and make sure you can do that? Make sure your calculator's in degrees. Just type in as you see, 28 times cosine of 64.
How do you find cosine of 64?
You hit the cosine button and then type in 64.
44.
And then times by 28. Okay. So this is like an exercise in just being able to like operate with the calculator so we can actually use trig to be useful. Miranda. So for 10, it's actually the same type of thing. It's a ratio of proportion. So you multiply what's on the diagonal and divide by what's left over. So it's 12.1. In this case, your calculator, you would do 12.1 divided by the sine of 24. And then,
Alright.
do you see that, Miranda?
Yes. Why is up there time?
Okay, because it's a ratio and proportion. So whenever you do a ratio and proportion, you multiply what's on the diagonal, the two knowns, and divide by the thing you don't, the leftover.
Okay.
So 64 times 28 divided by 1, but on this one here, the diagonal that's known are these two. 1 times 12.1, divide by the sine of, okay. So same thing we've been doing with ratio and proportion.
With the tan.
Okay. Same thing, yes. Let's skip around here a little bit. Here on number 12, you're just finding A. So you have to go backwards. Remember we did that last week. You use the inverse function. So sine inverse of 0.9455. Type that in. When you're looking for the angle, you have to use the inverse function. So now you're looking for A. Oh, yes. Find the measure of each angle.
So if you're trying to find the angle, it's always the
It's always the inverse function. So on your calculator, you would hit second sine. You see that? Second sine, and then you put in 0.9455, and you should get 70.996. So to the nearest degree, A would be 71. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do 16. So 16, you're supposed to find x. Do you see that?
So we find the 8.
So you have to use what you have. You have the 28, right? In reference to the 28, you have the side opposite and the adjacent. What trig function uses opposite and adjacent? Look up tangent, right? So the way you do this is you write the tangent of the angle, which is 28 degrees, and you say that's the ratio of the side opposite divided by the adjacent.
Equals, so what do we do?
So do you understand the setup?
So it's tan divided by what?
It's the tangent of 28 equals x over 14.
So tan.
Do you understand the setup?
Yeah. So it's 14 times tan 28.
That's right. So it's 14 times the tangent of 28 divided by 1. And you should get 7.44, yeah, 7.4 to the nearest 10. Okay? Try it. Try all of that worksheet and the first 5 on the back. Why? What do you need practice? Did we get that? So your goal is just to come back with questions. Try it and come back with questions.